Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're venturing into a world inherently shrouded in secrecy. We're talking about the challenging, often covert realm of intelligence operations.
Yeah. Whispers in the shadows, unseen hands. Actions that can shape nations without anyone really knowing.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to explore a very specific, incredibly detailed, and quite controversial document.
Yeah.
Our source material today is an investigative book called Raw in Bangladesh, Portrait of Aggressive Indian Intelligence Operations by Abu Rushd.
Right. Originally published in Bengali back in 2001 and then republished in English just this year, 2024.
And it's a compelling read, almost breathless, full of specific allegations, specific claims. It really pushes the boundaries of what's publicly discussed.
And the author, Abu Rushd, he brings a really unique perspective, quite an authoritative voice to this very sensitive topic. He's a former military officer turned seasoned journalist, known for really fearless investigative reporting on intelligence and national security in Bangladesh. For over 3 decades, he's done some groundbreaking work focusing on conflict zones, peacekeeping, the inner workings of intelligence agencies. He's written, I think, 8 books on espionage and national security. Some are even cataloged by major universities like Chicago, Yale, Toronto. So that background really sets the stage.
That context is crucial, yeah. Understanding the lens through which this book is written. So our mission for you, our listener, is to impartially unpack the serious allegations and claims presented in this book. We want to be really clear up front. Our goal isn't to endorse these claims or refute them. It's to thoroughly explore the detailed information provided in the source material, to extract the key insights for you to consider.
It's about understanding the what and the why, according to the author. What's being alleged? What patterns does he see?
Right. This isn't about taking sides. Intelligence operations are secretive by definition. This book aims to pull back that curtain, expose what it calls aggressive activities by a foreign intelligence agency.
Which makes for a fascinating and sometimes, pretty surprising discussion.
Okay, let's unpack this. So to really get into the book's core arguments, the author first lays out his fundamental understanding of espionage itself, how he sees this shadow world operating. What are the key distinctions he makes? The types of intelligence, the structure of these networks.
Right. He sets the stage by classifying intelligence into 3 main types. It's a useful framework for everything that follows in the book. First, there's strategic intelligence. This is the big picture stuff, broader scope. Assessing a target country's overall political, economic, cultural, military strength.
Okay.
It's forward-looking, identifying potential threats, future capabilities, even what the author calls cultural invasion, or deliberately disrupting a country's socio-political fabric.
Cultural invasion, that's an interesting term.
Yeah, it implies a deep, almost invisible influence. So strategic intelligence is that long-term view designed to potentially influence the very trajectory of a nation. Then you have tactical intelligence. It's much more focused. This is about things like following a specific person or closely monitoring the activities of a small group. Immediate, actionable details on specific, often short-term targets. And finally, there's counterintelligence. This is defensive, protecting your own national security, your sensitive information from hostile agencies.
So stopping spies, basically.
Essentially, yeah. Preventing infiltration into what he calls key point installations, or KP, is vulnerable spots like government bodies, military bases, building a shield, neutralizing internal threats.
Okay, that distinction is clear. Strategic, tactical, counterintelligence. That sets the stage. So we have the goals, the definitions, but how do these alleged networks actually operate on the ground? The book details the structure, which is really fascinating. How do the author describe the key roles?
He lays out a pretty clear hierarchy. At the top, you've got the resident. This is a specially trained intelligence officer who's in charge, controlling operations inside the target country.
And they're often undercover.
Very often. What's interesting is how they frequently operate under diplomatic immunity, posing as diplomats, maybe NGO officials, even religious figures sometimes.
The legal residents?
Exactly. That official status gives them a degree of immunity. Makes it very hard for local authorities to prosecute if they're discovered.
Right.
The resident's job is wide-ranging. Recruit agents, train them, analyze the collected intel, figure out the next steps, and maintain that crucial link back to central command. The source also notes, sometimes these residents might use illegal covers too, or even operate from a neighboring country, not directly inside.
So they're the field commanders, the strategists on the ground, but they don't do everything themselves, right? How do they execute the plans?
No, below the resident, you have operatives. These are also specially trained, but they're experts in a particular sector or skill.
Okay.
They act directly on the intelligence the agents gather. They carry out the special activities.
Like what, specifically?
Well, the book gives examples like training insurgent groups, aiding subversive activities, maybe even direct sabotage, or providing arms to rebels. They're the ones putting the intelligence into action, the hands-on specialists.
And then there's this other role, the talent spotter. This sounds crucial for building the network. How does the author describe them? It mentions hooking up an agent.
Yeah, that phrase really stands out, doesn't it? Hooking up an agent. The talent spotter is vital for expansion. These are people used by the resident or chief agents to identify potential recruits.
Who are they looking for?
People with special knowledge or access, targeted officials, intellectuals, cultural activists, anyone who might be susceptible or valuable. The hooking up part implies this deliberate, subtle manipulation, finding vulnerabilities, finding motivations they can exploit. It's very calculated.
A psychological game, almost. The book also talks about how information itself is gathered. It's not always a clean transaction, is it? Like money for secrets.
No, definitely not always. He outlines a few ways. First, there's information given consciously. This is the classic spy stuff, monetary rewards, or maybe exploiting someone's personal grievance against their own state. A deliberate exchange. Second, information can be given subconsciously. This happens a lot, apparently, especially with government officials. They might reveal sensitive details just through casual chat, gossip,
Really? Like just talking too much?
Exactly. The author gives this interesting historical example from 1970. A Pakistani diplomat in London, apparently angry, said something like, "We'll teach those stupid Bengalis a lesson they'll never forget."
Wow.
That seemingly offhand remark, the book claims, helped Raw anticipate Pakistan's harsh approach towards East Pakistan. Shows how tiny details can be hugely significant. And then there's unconsciously provided information, where important people unknowingly give away valuable intelligence, completely aware of the significance of what they're saying or doing.
That's kind of scary. They don't even know they're being used.
That's the implication. It highlights just how subtle and pervasive intelligence gathering can be. You might be a source without ever realizing it.
Does the book explain how agencies create situations for these unconscious disclosures? Or find people prone to it?
It talks more about the pervasiveness of the network itself, creating social settings, using cultural centers, things like that, where interactions naturally happen. It's less about making someone spill secrets unconsciously and more about being present everywhere, listening constantly and identifying those who are naturally more talkative or less guarded. The talent spotters look for people with access and potentially the right personality. It leverages human nature.
Oh, so we have the main players, the methods of getting information. But the book suggests the intelligence world has even more layers, other shadowy elements. What else does the author bring up?
Well, he talks about cultural aggression experts. This is a striking concept.
Right.
The book claims intelligence organizations actually employ specialists specifically to influence a target country's culture. The author emphasizes political aggression is visible, but cultural aggression is often invisible. It's insidious, changing a nation from within its values, its stories, its identity.
And what about double agents?
Yeah, he covers those too. Agents playing for both sides or pretending to. Often their own parent organization doesn't even know their true loyalty.
High risk, high reward.
Extremely high risk. The author notes betrayal is always a possibility. It's a dangerous game.
And then there's a darker, more controversial aspect the book alleges, the use of women in espionage. It mentions brothels, call girls, even film stars.
Yes, the source makes some pretty explicit claims there. It cites historical examples like Mata Hari and alleges that major agencies like the CIA, KGB, SIS have funded or run brothels for intelligence purposes.
And it specifically accuses Raw.
It does. The book alleges Raw was accused of running brothels at one point. It also claims Bombay film heroines were used, particularly to gather military and strategic info or secure trade deals, especially involving Arab sheikhs and Israeli interests, using what it calls 2 W's out of 3, wealth and women. It definitely paints a grim picture of manipulation.
So with all these tactics, these different roles, it really begs the question the book addresses. Why spy? What's the core motivation, according to the author?
The answer, he says, is brutally simple. To survive.
To survive.
Yes. He argues that even friendly nations spy on each other because circumstances change. Today's friend could be tomorrow's enemy. And the book is emphatic on this point. Espionage fundamentally lacks ethics. Anything goes in the pursuit of national interest, or what the author sees as hegemonic designs. It's presented as a world without moral boundaries, driven solely by perceived need and power. Hashtags 2, allegations of India's strategic approach and the Chanakya principles.
That idea of lacking ethics, driven by survival, it sets a really stark tone. Building on that, the book then makes the central claim that India's foreign policy is deeply guided by ancient Chanakya principles. What exactly are these principles as the author lays them out, and what's the main takeaway he wants us to get from their alleged application?
Okay, so the author breaks down international relations based on these ancient Indian philosophies attributed to Chanakya into SUS types. First, peace through treaty. Second, relentless attack, basically war. Third, indifference, which he equates to neutralism.
Right.
Fourth, state empowerment through military means, building up strength. Fifth is interesting, it's called friendship, but the definition given is forcing surrender for security and shelter.
So not really friendship in the usual sense.
Not at all, according to this interpretation. And sixth, a dual policy being peaceful with some, hostile towards others simultaneously.
So the author presents these 6 principles. But the key insight he seems to be driving at is that these aren't just historical curiosities. He sees them as a kind of timeless strategic playbook for India, right? Something that shapes actual policy.
Exactly. He argues it's a consistent blueprint, allegedly transcending different political parties in India, though he claims Congress leaders paid particular attention. It's about an underlying philosophy shaping state actions over decades.
Okay, so how does the book connect this theory to actual practice? What examples does it give of India allegedly applying these principles in the region?
He provides several historical examples. One key one is Nehru's nuclear India vision. The book claims Nehru hinted at getting nuclear weapons way back in 1946, even before independence was certain and while India was underdeveloped.
And that fits which principle?
The author links this to state empowerment through military means, a long-term strategic ambition right from the start. Then he points to various treaties of friendship and cooperation as alleged examples, but with that coercive interpretation of friendship. With Sikkim in 1950, India took on a collector role, which the book frames as a step towards its eventual annexation in 1974, an act the source calls a colonialist effort planned by Raw, disguised as a democratic movement. With Nepal in 1950, the book alleges Nepal was forced into a treaty stopping it from buying weapons from third countries. Then, in 1989, when Nepal tried to buy anti-aircraft guns from China, India allegedly blockaded transit points for the landlocked nation.
Forcing them to back down.
Exactly. Presented as friendship, meaning forced surrender. And with Sri Lanka in 1987, Rajiv Gandhi ordered that airdrop of supplies to Tamil rebels Operation Pumalai. This led to a forced treaty and Indian peacekeeping forces landing. The author sees this as demonstrating military empowerment and forced surrender again.
So the book argues these aren't isolated incidents, but part of a consistent pattern based on these principles.
That's the core argument, yes, a pattern of leveraging power under different guises.
Okay, this brings us to RAW itself. It was formed in 1968 after the '65 war with Pakistan, meant to be more effective than the older intelligence bureau, the IB.
Right, the IBU was seen as a bit slow, bureaucratic. RAW was intended to be more modern.
And the book does acknowledge RAW's help during Bangladesh's 1971 liberation struggle. Training freedom fighters, providing intelligence, that's widely accepted history.
Yes, it gives credit for that assistance training, strategy, battlefield intel, vital support.
But here's where it gets really controversial. Despite acknowledging that aid, the book makes a very contentious claim about a treaty.
It does, a secret 7-point treaty, allegedly prepared by RAW officials. The book claims the acting president of Bangladesh at the time, Sayyid Nazrul Islam, actually fainted when he was compelled to sign it.
Fainted. That's a dramatic claim.
Very. And the book describes this moment as India taking the chance of the century, suggesting that even while providing crucial help, it was part of a larger, long-term strategic calculation, exploiting the situation to extend influence, fitting those Chanakya principles.
Wow. That's a serious allegation, reframing the narrative of that support.
It completely reframes it.
And this leads directly to the book's central argument, that even though RAW helped with liberation, its activities after independence allegedly aimed to keep Bangladesh weak, pursuing hegemonic designs. How does the book explain this apparent shift or maybe continuation of strategy?
Well, the book argues there wasn't a fundamental change in policy. The approach allegedly remained one of indirect confrontational control, not direct military takeover. The initial aid was just step one.
So why keep Bangladesh weak, according to the author? What was the fear?
The fear, allegedly, was that a strong, independent Bangladesh could inspire separatist movements within India itself, particularly in West Bengal or the Seven Sisters states in the northeast, which were already volatile.
The Frankenstein idea mentioned earlier.
Exactly. India apparently saw Bangladesh as potentially igniting or cooling turmoil in that sensitive region. So the alleged strategy became constant, covert pressure, destabilization to maintain Bangladesh as a compliant, non-threatening neighbor.
Okay, so after independence, the book claims the focus shifted to covert destabilization. It goes into extensive detail about this alleged multifaceted approach to undermine Bangladesh. What were the broad objectives, according to the author?
He lays out a few key ones. Firstly, that alleged directive from Indira Gandhi to prevent Bangladesh from becoming a Frankenstein, a threat to India's internal security. That concern about instability spilling over, especially regarding the Seven Sisters.
Right.
Secondly, the goal was allegedly maintaining control without direct intervention. An indirect but confrontational approach, keeping Bangladesh weak without, a military takeover like the book alleges happened with Sikkim.
Because a strong Bangladesh was seen as a threat.
That's the argument. A prosperous Bangladesh with a strong national identity might fuel separatism in India. So the alleged need for constant covert pressure and destabilization tactics.
Okay, let's get into some specific alleged operations. One of the most detailed and frankly disturbing is the push-in, pushback conspiracy the book claims happened around 1992-1993. What was the alleged pretext? And what happened?
The pretext, according to the source, involved the formation of groups like the Hindu Buddhist Christian Oikya Parishad and the Bangabhumi movement inside India. These groups allegedly spread communal hatred, serving as a kind of test case for RAW.
And then came Operation Pushback.
Yes. The book claims India's Border Security Force, the BSF, pushed thousands of Bengali-speaking people labeled infiltrators into Bangladesh from border camps. The descriptions are grim. Inhuman oppression.
How did Bangladesh respond?
The Bangladeshi border guards, the BDR, resisted the pushback. The foreign ministry opposed it too, though the book notes no formal protest letter was sent. But the source paints this picture of a real humanitarian crisis. Allegations of rape, looting, starvation in the camps, BSF driving people into no man's land between the two borders.
So the core insight here is the alleged use of human suffering as a geopolitical tool.
Exactly. Displacement and suffering used to create pressure and internal instability inside Bangladesh.
And parallel to this, the book alleges another conspiracy, the Bangladesh Muhajir Sangha in 1991. You mentioned this was described as a manufactured propaganda front.
Yes, that's the claim. It allegedly involved a staged press conference in Kolkata. Self-declared Muslim infiltrators supposedly announced their presence.
And the Indian media picked it up.
Amplified it, according to the book. The purpose was allegedly to prove this massive influx of Bangladeshis into India, creating a narrative of infiltration.
But the author says it was fake.
He details an investigation by a magazine called Kalam. This investigation allegedly exposed the whole thing, traced the leadership not to actual refugees, but to politically connected figures. It highlights the alleged use of pure disinformation.
What did that investigation find about who was behind it? It mentions a place called Sunny Villa.
Right. The investigation led to this place, Sunny Villa in Kolkata, described as almost like a fort for security. A man named Chittaranjan Sutar allegedly lived there. He was claimed to be a key leader of both the Muhajir Sangha and another group, the Refugee Welfare Parishad.
Okay.
The source claims this house had trained Bangladeshi Hindu youths, even 15 bodyguards, some non-Bengali, allegedly provided by Indian intelligence.
And his son was involved.
Bapi Sutar, allegedly the #2 director, he apparently admitted the organizations had no real structure, just conveners.
So how is the alleged orchestration exposed?
The key was the shared infrastructure. Posters, leaflets for both organizations were identical in printing and content, and ordered by the same person, a Sushanta Babu, allegedly Sujanta Shaha, another leader linked to Sunny Villa.
Suggesting one hand behind both movements.
Precisely. The book claims the Muhajir Sangha's demand for international human rights was just a pretext for Chittababu and others to raise an issue somehow, create instability in Bangladesh. It shows the alleged sophistication of using proxy groups and propaganda.
Then there's the Bangabhumi movement, presented as an ongoing conspiracy after 1991. The goal, allegedly, was to redivide Bangladesh along religious lines.
That's the stark claim. The activities allegedly included frantic propaganda near the border, armed training, and even infiltrating militia members called Bangasinas into Bangladesh to campaign for a political party and hand out ID cards.
And the leadership.
The book quotes Kalidas Baija, the alleged commander-in-chief of Bangasena. He reportedly said the only alternative was for Bangladesh to accept submission and become a part of India. Chilling words.
Did the book allege external support?
Yes, it claims Indian support. Groups like Amra Bengali, Charmis's Shanti Bahini, and an Indian intelligence agency allegedly provided military training. Dr. Badia himself reportedly claimed the Indian government would handle arms and the army for his cause. The author uses this to suggest a long-term goal of assimilation.
Another really controversial point is the Taslima Nasrin issue and her novel Laza, Shame. This came out in 1993, after the Babri Mosque demolition. The book makes a huge allegation here.
A very stark allegation that the novel Laza was basically a creation of Ra.
Created for what purpose?
To portray Bangladesh as a communal country where Hindus are oppressed. The goal, allegedly, was to shatter Bangladesh's international image. The source quotes an Indian researcher, Ashok Abiswas, claiming Ra lionized Taslima Nasrin, supported her financially, and used Laza as a great success to paint Bangladesh as communal and oppressor of minority people.
And political parties got involved.
Allegedly, yes. The BJP and other West Bengal parties supported Taslima, distributed free copies of Laza, framed it as exposing Muslim fundamentalists in Bangladesh. The implication is a coordinated propaganda campaign using a literary figure.
And this propaganda theme continues with the Faraka speech of Khaleda Zia and a 45-page report of the Congress. What was the alleged aim there?
The purpose, the book claims, was again to label Bangladesh as a communal terrorist state internationally.
Why? To what end?
Strategic aims, allegedly. Stop foreign investment coming into Bangladesh, hinder its democracy, and sideline important bilateral issues. The Congress report from September 1993 supposedly contained fictitious stories of serious Hindu repression in Bangladesh, claims of mass rapes, destruction of homes and temples after Babri Masjid, even a cleansing program to expel Hindus.
And these claims were spread internationally.
Yes, the book alleges the Hindu Buddha Christian Oikya Parishad sent the same press release with these false claims to the UN and other international bodies, even though the international community apparently found them untrue after scrutiny. The book explicitly states this organization's objective was to create communal riot or civil war in Bangladesh and open the way for the neighbor country to intervene. It suggests a very dangerous game of manufacturing instability using human rights narratives. #IAV. Allegations of political interference and destabilization efforts.
Okay, so beyond the cultural and social fronts, the book alleges direct political interference and just blatant destabilization tactics. One of the most sweeping claims is truly staggering. 30,000 raw agents are active in and outside the government in Bangladesh. 30,000. What's the core insight the author is pushing with that number?
It's startling, isn't it? The core insight seems to be that if this is true, we're not just talking about a few spies here and there. We're talking about alleged systemic control, a pervasive subversion of the state itself, making genuine self-governance incredibly difficult.
Everywhere.
The book claims every sector: government, administration, industry, commerce, banking, railways, airways, defense, foreign ministry, education, culture, media. And it allegedly extends down to everyday people, too. Laborers, students, rickshaw pullers, pilots, taxi drivers. The author even states that in some administrative sectors, total control lies in the hands of Ra.
And what are these alleged agents doing?
Instigating trouble, basically. Internal agitation, strikes, destructive movements, arson, protests, all aimed, the book claims, at creating instability and economic disruption. It paints a picture of a nation deeply compromised from within.
That's an extraordinary claim. The book also mentions, though with less detail, a conspiracy for creating confusion in Bangladesh, if necessary, to go ahead with the plan of killing Begum Khaleda Zia. What does that suggest about India's alleged view of the then Prime Minister?
It suggests an extreme level of animosity, potentially. The book links this alleged intent to her perceived defiance, particularly after a speech she gave at the UN about the Faraka barrage issue. It claims India widened its trap of conspiracy, wanting to de-establish the internal political situation by any means, and, if necessary, try to kill Begum Khaleda Zia or to dethrone the BNP government. It implies a willingness to resort to extreme measures.
Which brings us to perhaps the most explosive allegation in the entire book, the killing of President Ziaur Rahman. What was the alleged motive, and what evidence does the book offer for Raw's involvement?
The motive alleged is that India never liked the strong leadership of President Ziaur Rahman, particularly his push for Bangladeshi nationalism and his efforts to reduce Indian influence.
And it claims Raw was directly involved.
It cites Indian sources, a defense researcher Partha Sarathi Ghosh, politician Subramaniam Swamy, journalist Ritu Sarin in Ananda Bazar Patrika, who allegedly claimed Raw intended to dethrone President Zia, bring the Awami League to power, and even planned his assassination. It mentions Morarji Desai supposedly stopping an earlier attempt, but claims it resumed under Indira Gandhi.
What specific evidence does the book point to? It sounds mostly circumstantial.
It is largely circumstantial, yes, but the author weaves these points together. First, Sheikh Hasina returned to Bangladesh just 12 days before the assassination. Second, India allegedly moved extra troops to the border the day before. Third, Indian radio, Akashbani, supposedly reported Zia's death and an Indian army alert before it was widely known globally. Fourth, Indian officials allegedly asked about Sheikh Hasina's status after Zia's death. And finally, the claim that fugitive army officers allegedly involved in the killing found shelter in India.
So the argument is that Zia was removed because he was pursuing an independent path?
That's the core allegation. He pioneered Bangladeshi nationalism, pursued an independent foreign policy, and that allegedly thwarted India's blueprint for extending its supremacy. It fits the alleged pattern of eliminating independent leadership.
Does the author offer more direct proof, or mainly these connections and cited sources?
It leans heavily on these connections and the Indian sources cited. It frames them as indicators of a consistent policy to remove leaders who resisted Indian influence. Direct, irrefutable proof isn't presented, which is often the case with such intelligence allegations, but the narrative is built on this pattern of events.
After 1975, the book alleges the creation of Qadariya Bahini. This was described as a Raw-backed armed rebellion against Zia's government.
Yes, led by Kader Siddiqui, a former Awami League figure, he reportedly had close association with Raw and launched armed attacks against the Bangladesh army operating from Indian soil, according to the book. It's framed as an alleged proxy war to destabilize Zia's government.
And the book mentions other destabilization tactics during Zia's rule, specifically military coups.
Yes, a series of coups and rebellions and cantonments between 1976 and 1977. A major one in Dhaka in late 77 involved the Air Force. These are alleged to have been instigated by infiltrated Raw agents within the Bangladesh army. Some agents, the book claims, were formerly part of the Rakshi Bakini, a force reportedly set up under Indian direction by Major General S.S. Uban.
And the goal of these coups?
To create chaos, lawlessness, keep the administration constantly fighting fires, unable to focus on governing or nation building. It's presented as using internal military dissent to paralyze the government.
Okay, let's jump forward to the mid-1990s. The book alleges significant influence on the 1996 general election and the movement for a caretaker government. What was the alleged purpose and what tactics were used?
The alleged purpose was for Raw to install a friendly government in Bangladesh. The book says Raw made a mistake in 1991 when the BNP won. So to correct this, the tactics allegedly included widespread unrest, transport strikes, worker agitation, campus violence, arson, sabotage like uprooting railway lines, attacking airports, disrupting seaports.
Disguised as political movements.
Exactly. The book claims these looked like political protests, but were actually professional espionage acts of destabilization. The insight is that seemingly organic movements were allegedly orchestrated. There's even a quote from a former intelligence officer claiming Raw's Special Service Bureau recruited about 500 trained Bangladeshi saboteurs specifically to cause disruption before the February 96 election.
And specific Indian officials are named.
Yes, the book names several Indian High Commission officials. R.N. Batora, Bishnu Prasad, Yashwar Singh Rathore, Brigadier Chaki, and particularly J.C. Pantha. Pantha, listed as First Secretary Education, is alleged to have been the Raw station chief. He supposedly contacted both Awami League and some BNP leaders, setting up meetings using cultural events for information exchange.
And the Janatar Mancha?
The Janatar Mancha, or public stage movement during that time, was allegedly set up after meetings involving Pantha and other Indian High Commission officials, clearly aimed, the book argues, at influencing the election.
That's a very direct claim of diplomatic interference. And there's that anecdote, the Western attaché incident. What did that supposedly reveal?
It's quite a story. A senior Indian diplomat, apparently after having too much to drink at a party hosted by a Western defense attaché, allegedly let slip sensitive information about Raw's influence over appointments within Bangladesh's own sensitive agencies.
And what happened?
It reportedly led to the sudden removal of high-level officials, including an agency chief, within a week. The book uses this to illustrate the alleged depth of Raw's penetration and influence, right down to staffing in another country's security apparatus. It implies a high degree of confidence, maybe even arrogance.
The book also discusses the alleged secret infiltration of Indian citizens into Bangladesh. What was the purpose claimed here?
Multiple purposes, allegedly. Business, travel, but also just to mix up easily because of the cultural and linguistic similarities. This was supposedly aided by circles within Bangladesh described as submissive to India.
How did they infiltrate?
By exploiting lax visa rules, overstaying illegally, setting up businesses, even getting jobs at all levels in companies, often without the Bangladeshi government knowing where they were.
And a link to elections again.
Yes, the book alleges these infiltrations increased around election times, with groups of Indians supposedly entering to support specific political parties. It cites a figure: 72,000 Indians entering legally between 86 and 92, with many overstaying. It also gives an example of Hindi-speaking Indians found in Sylhet who claimed long residency but seemed suspicious. It raises questions about silent demographic influence. The core idea is using people movement to sway politics and build a loyal base.
Then there's the alleged propaganda for unification of two Bengal, inspired by Germany and Korea.
So the book claims Raw patronized newspapers, TV channels like ZTV and Doordardan allegedly promoted this idea of Dui Bangla, two Bengals becoming one. There was even a TV drama, Fire Alarm, that mentioned it.
And Taslima Nasrin comes up again.
Yes, her article, Bandi Arni, I Am a Prisoner, in an Indian paper is cited. She apparently wrote something like, "When will we be made one? We will walk from Bangan to Benapole." The book presents this as part of a coordinated, raw effort to push the unification idea, suggesting a long-term goal beyond just influence, potentially towards territorial change.
And finally, in this section, the instigation to divide Bangladesh in 1994, sudden demands for new administrative division.
Right. Movements popped up demanding new divisions in Rainpur, Bogra, Sylhet, Kamilla, etc. While looking like local development demands, the book alleges a hidden motive:
Which was?
to make BNP more troubled and infuse in the minds of the people the seeds or philosophy of separatism, create internal divisions and instability. Politicians allegedly jumped on board to embarrass the government. But the fact that these demands largely vanished after 1996, according to the book, suggests they weren't organic but strategically instigated to weaken the ruling party. Hashtag V. Allegations of economic and cultural aggression.
So, moving beyond direct political meddling, the book claims Raw also actively worked to undermine Bangladesh's economy and culture, a different kind of aggression. Can you give a key example of the alleged economic sabotage?
A really striking one is the alleged connection between Japanese capital investment and Hartal strike. Okay, so the BNP government under Khalida Zia was pushing economic reform, trying to attract foreign investment. She visited Japan in 1994, and things looked promising.
Encouraging prospects, the book says.
Exactly. But then, just 3 months later, in June 94, a 40-member Japanese delegation arrives in Dhaka for a feasibility study. On the very same day, a group called the Teacher Sangram Liaison Committee starts a sit-in strike and calls a general strike, a Hartal, for June 14th.
Coincidence.
The book heavily implies it wasn't. On June 14th, bombs and Molotov cocktails were allegedly thrown near the Sonargaon Hotel where the Japanese delegation was staying. They were basically confined there for 3 days.
What was the result?
They left Bangladesh with a negative attitude, understandably, and the book claims those Japanese investors then diverted the capital they were considering for Bangladesh to India in the same sectors. It's presented as a successful diversion tactic, directly linking alleged covert ops to economic harm.
Wow, that's quite an accusation. The book also mentions an alleged arms purchase to make the BNP government volatile, sending weapons to opposition forces.
Yes, the claim is that arms were sent to strengthen opposition groups to conduct a definite operation and shatter the secured situation. It mentions a specific alleged payment of $2.5 lakh for a shipment, including SMGs, rocket launchers, rifles, grenades, that suggests a deliberate effort to fuel armed conflict.
And back to propaganda. The book talks extensively about propaganda, media, and political parties present misinformation to sway public opinion towards India. How is this illustrated?
It points to an unnamed Bangladeshi daily newspaper, calling it a powerful mouthpiece for India, allegedly publishing news serving Indian interests, with one journalist suspected of working for RAW.
Is there a specific example?
Yes, this journalist allegedly traveled to Kashmir and Kargil, sponsored by RAW, and wrote reports portraying the Kashmiri fighters as fundamentalists and terrorists, validating the Indian government line which contradicted public sentiment in Bangladesh. The book calls this part of a broader misinformation war, RAW allegedly spreading false info through TV, radio, media, rumors, even meetings organized by fifth columnists. The aim: diminish Bangladesh's interests, distort history to fit the narrative of the Sangha Parivar, the Hindu nationalist groups in India, and generally make India look good.
There's even an alleged raw BBC connection, claiming the BBC advised Bangladesh to join India.
It refers to a 1989 BBC report. This report allegedly portrayed Bangladesh as the world's poorest country, with joining India as its only option for survival. The source suggests RAW influenced the BBC's Kolkata office to broadcast subtly anti-Bangladesh news, promoting a pro-Indian view of the subcontinent, using international media for psychological ops, essentially.
And what about NGOs and missionaries? How do they fit into the alleged picture?
The book claims NGOs and missionaries are involved in intelligence. It alleges that some NGOs, like one called the Center for Research in Indo-Bangladesh Relations, reportedly funded entirely by India, and missionary institutions are used as covers for espionage.
Why them?
Because of their grassroots access and status as aid groups. They can allegedly gather info to tarnish Bangladesh's image internationally, like on the Chittagong Hill Tracks issue, or exert pressure on international bodies like the World Bank or ADB regarding things like railway transit for India. The book even draws a parallel to Kautilya's ancient text, the Arthashastra, mentioning spies disguised as priests. A long tradition.
So institutional covers. Where else are these activities alleged to happen? Cultural centers, restaurants.
Yes, Indian cultural centers in Dhaka, like Bharat Bachitra, are allegedly used for networking with high-profile individuals, invitations to seminars, exhibitions, that sort of thing. And specific restaurants in upscale areas like Gulshan Banani and Tanmundi, especially those serving Indian food, are claimed to function as safe houses or dead letter boxes, places where agents supposedly drop off classified info, receive instructions, or hold secret meetings, blending right into the city's daily life.
And finally, this intriguing Singapore connection.
Yeah.
What's the allegation there? Sounds like spy fiction.
It does a bit. The book claims that high-level Bangladeshi leaders, nationalists, Islamists, people publicly known to be anti-Indian, secretly meet with RAW officials in third countries like Singapore.
Why would they do that?
The trips are often disguised as medical treatment or business, the alleged goals. To secure political power back home with help from the Indian lobby, or maybe to get corruption cases against them dropped by the government in power, at the time the Awami League. It suggests a kind of pragmatic, clandestine dealing that cuts across stated ideologies when power or self-preservation is on the line.
Okay, we've covered a huge range of alleged operations and tactics from the book. To get a fuller picture, the author interviewed several former Bangladeshi intelligence chiefs. Their insights are really crucial for understanding the other side, the challenges faced by Bangladeshi counterintelligence.
Absolutely. Their collective perspective is quite revealing.
So what's the consensus among these former chiefs? What does it all mean for Bangladesh's ability to defend itself against these alleged operations?
Well, their views are pretty consistent and honestly quite concerning from their perspective. They unanimously agree that RAW does have a widespread network in Bangladesh. Agents infiltrated into all spheres of state and social affairs, politics, culture, business, administration, media, a deeply entrenched presence.
Difficult to counter that.
Extremely. And made harder by a massive funding disparity. They estimate Bangladeshi intelligence operates on maybe 1% of RAW's alleged budget, which the book puts at 1,000 crore rupees annually. That resource gap is huge.
What other challenges did they mention?
A lack of specific intelligence policies or directives from the government. This leads to ambiguity, makes them vulnerable to political whims, which ties into political interference. They lament that ruling parties often use the intelligence agencies for their own party interests, not purely national security. This weakens effectiveness.
And staffing, manpower.
Big issues there, too. Shortage of skilled people, lack of modern equipment, and interestingly, a kind of disinterest among military or police officers seconded to intelligence. They fear getting caught up in sensitive work could harm their main careers, so they prefer to avoid nuisance during their temporary postings.
So given all these problems, what do the chiefs suggest?
They strongly advocate for reform, a separate, dedicated intelligence cadre, not just temporary postings, and a central coordination cell free from partisan politics to ensure professionalism and continuity. It's a clear call for structural change.
The interviews also seem to corroborate some specific allegations from the book, like Raw's alleged role in Zia's killing.
Yes, on that point, while they admit direct proof is hard to find, many chiefs express their belief that India never liked Zia's strong nationalism. They confirm seeing the Indian newspaper reports alleging Raw's involvement. So there's a strong consensus among them on that sensitive point.
What about things like Shanti Vahini or Bangabhumi?
They're quite blunt there, too, stating these movements cannot have their existence without the help of Raw, that India provides arms, ammo, other support, directly implicating Raw in ongoing destabilization via proxies.
And cultural infiltration.
They talk about that, too. One chief described it as Raw infiltrating at first in our culture in a romantic way, then extending into education and eventually politics and the economy, a gradual systematic expansion.
Media manipulation.
Corroborated as well. They state Raw allegedly funds certain newspapers, columnists, intellectuals to push its agenda and undermine Bangladesh's own security forces. And General Zia Khan is quoted directly stating his belief that Indian strategists have a hidden objective to establish undivided India, what they call Akhand Farab Mata, undivided Mother India, highlighting that alleged long-term vision.
And perhaps one of the most striking claims they apparently corroborated was about Raw's alleged influence on the Awami League.
Yes, some former chiefs claimed Raw's direct and indirect influence on the Awami League has no bounds.
No bounds. How so?
They recounted alleged instances where Awami League leaders would inform Raw officials, like that J.C. Pantha figure, about internal party decisions, even seeking the Indian lobby's support for power or to avoid corruption charges. It paints a picture of a very challenging environment for Bangladeshi intelligence, where internal politics and external influence become deeply intertwined and hard to separate. The overall feeling from these chiefs is one of deep concern about external pressures on their nation's sovereignty. #tag7. Concluding thoughts and takeaways.
So we've really taken a deep dive today into Raw in Bangladesh. We've unpacked the book's expansive, incredibly detailed claims spanning political interference, cultural manipulation, economic sabotage, even alleged assassinations.
A huge range of allegations.
And it's crucial to reiterate, this entire discussion has been an exploration of the author's allegations and the findings as presented in his book. We haven't been endorsing or refuting these claims ourselves.
Right. We're presenting the content of this significant investigative work for your consideration.
It definitely reinforces just how complex intelligence operations can be, especially as the book alleges, between neighboring countries.
And that recurring theme from the author, espionage has no bounds because it lacks ethics, really shapes his entire interpretation. It suggests a world where national interest or perceived national interest justifies almost any action.
For you, our listener, this deep dive hopefully serves as a powerful reminder. A reminder of how information can be shaped, how narratives get constructed, and why it's so important to critically evaluate sources, even compelling ones like this book.
Yeah, understanding the alleged why and how behind operations like these, true or not, offers a deeper insight into regional geopolitics, into those hidden forces that might influence nations.
It really leaves us with a final, provocative thought to mull over. In a world drowning in information, how do we possibly discern between a genuine threat and a manufactured narrative? And what role do these unseen forces truly play in shaping the destinies of nations? Thank you for joining us on this revealing deep dive into a very challenging, very insightful topic.
We hope it gave you plenty to think about regarding information, national security, and international relations.
Until next time, keep digging deeper into the stories that truly matter.